We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KARI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 3 times a week on the internet across the nation on knookmedia.com. Our guest by phone, one of the good guys, David Horowitz, author of a great new book, The Black Book of the American Left.
Is somebody we agree with.
Yes, there's nothing I've seen David write that I don't agree with 110%. David, I saw an article you wrote recently about Ferguson. I wanted to touch on that a little bit. God.
Yeah, it's exactly the same problem.
Yes.
For whatever it is now, it's 5 months. They've had a lynch mob in the streets of Ferguson. I call it a lynch mob is the only way to describe it. They're not protesting. They want to hang white police officer because he's white, and they want to portray a black thug as a victim because he's black.
It's also an excuse.
That's what the lynch mob, and the lynch mob has succeeded. The officer will never be a police officer again. He didn't get his severance pay. And the racists in the White House, Obama and Holder, are going to try to put federal charges against him and ruin his life. And you don't have no conservative voices saying this is a lynch mob. That's what it is. Well, the chief lynch mob leader, Al Sharpton, is the president's advisor on race. The president is a racist. Who says that?
Sharpton's a tax dodger.
Cojones to say that. That's the problem. When the language is controlled by the left, we lose.
Yeah. There's a great video out. In fact, I saw it this morning. It was on Hannity's show. He shows the poor guy who owns the market in Ferguson getting robbed by Brown, and then the same camera showing that place being torched and lit on fire after these guys. They destroyed it. Yeah, and that's not protesters. I mean, it's a lynch. Like you say, it's a mob.
But you see conservatives referring to them as protesters.
No, it's
the rioters. I would accept rioters, lynchers. I would accept that, but not protesters. What are they protesting? The facts.
I think by executive order, President Obama is going to call them undocumented looters.
That's what it's all about: looting and robbing.
Sure, yeah, it's
that's
insane.
the excuse to do this, so they can steal stuff.
Well, and I hear President Obama talk about the rule of law, and it makes me ill.
All right.
So anyway, Ferguson
Hold on a second.
is part of the racial nightmare in this country. Except I think, I wrote an article called "Thank You, ISIS," because for a decade and more, those of us who were warning about the savagery of these genocidal Muslims have been marginalized and called racist and Islamophobes and so forth. Our chorus never reached the American public until ISIS began beheading Americans on camera.
Yes.
Then the network news, the left-wing network news, could not avoid dealing with it. And so into every living room in America comes these beheadings and wakes America up, or begins to wake it up. We're not waked up until we increase our military and start spending money on the military instead of food stamps.
And golf.
America hasn't waked up.
Yeah.
But the same thing in Ferguson. These lefties who are, it's the same as the Occupy Wall Street people. They're people who are idiots and they hate America. They're waking the whole public up as to the problem. Any sane person who doesn't have their brain glued up by left-wing anti-white ideology and anti-American ideology can see that Michael Brown was a thug who attacked a policeman in his police car when he was armed, sought to grab his weapon, and got himself killed. Justly. Anybody can see that who hasn't brainwashed by these leftists.
No question about it.
I think all America now, understands the problem, and they understand that the president and the attorney general are racist.
Yeah,
anti-white racists is what they are.
I definitely agree with you. We're having a conversation with David Horowitz, author of a great new book, The Black Book of the American Left. You made
a Great
comment.
Betrayal.
You can find it under The Great Betrayal.
The Great Betrayal.
If you type in The Great Betrayal on Amazon, it'll come up.
Volume 3. Another comment you made, I'd like you to explain, talking about how we protect enemies abroad and criminals at home.
The left. The left identifies with enemies abroad and criminals at home. Ferguson is a perfect example. You could have the O.J. Simpson case if you want. And abroad, 1 million people went out to demonstrate against the Iraq war before it was started, while it was being built up. They were called anti-war protests, which was baloney. If they were anti-war protests, there would have been at least one demonstration in front of the Iraqi embassy saying to Saddam Hussein, obey the 16 and then 17 UN Security Council resolutions, which is why we went to war, to enforce them. There wasn't one demonstration in front of the Iraqi embassy. Those demonstrations were all anti-American. That's what they were about.
David, you, looking at your book, it said that you used to be part of the Red Diaper Baby group. What turned you from that communism approach?
Red Diaper Baby.
What turned you? Why did you change?
I'm sorry, I was letting my whistle there.
No.
Both my parents were card-carrying members of the American Communist Party. And I was one of the founders of the so-called New Left, which was a continuation of the communist movement, and the Progressive Left, which is another continuation of the communist movement. Barack Obama comes from the same background I did. He was brought up by communists, and he never left this anti-American left. And so was the woman who, behind the throne, who was pulling all the strings, Valerie Jarrett, in the White House. She's her family were Iranian communists, and she never left the communist left. What happened to me was I had my eyes open, but not enough. I raised a lot of money for the Black Panther Party to buy a church and turn it into a school. And they murdered the woman I hired or recruited to do the bookkeeping. And that stopped me. And that took place. Her body was discovered in February 1975. 2 months later, the Democrats had taken over the House and Senate after the Watergate hearings. And they cut off economic and military aid. We didn't have any troops there at the time, to Vietnam and Cambodia. And both governments fell. And the communists, whom the left supported, proceeded to slaughter 2.5 million people. So that was the end of my career in the left. I saw I was among people who support murderers, people who hate this country. I began to appreciate what this country, what this country is about. It's democracy. It took me many years, another 7 years, to become a conservative, and 9 actually to vote for a Republican, Ronald Reagan, in 1984.
That's a good way to start. David, we've got about a minute left. Tell us your website, because, again, the website is great, and there's a lot of great books that David's written.
Frontpagemag.com or frontpagemagazine.com. And it's a website that leads you. I have several websites, Truth Revolt, discoverthenetworks.org. You can get these all from Front Page, which is an encyclopedia of the left if you get confused about the names and the organizations and you want to know what they've done. It's a kind of Wikipedia of the left.
Yeah, and this is volume 3, The Great Betrayal. And how many
You
volumes?
can go to blackbookoftheamericanleft.com and all the volumes. I've only done 3. Well, I've done many more, but only 3 have been published so far. The Great Betrayal is the 3rd volume.
And there's going to be 8 eventually, I think, is what I read. 10. Okay,
yeah.
Eventually. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'd like to have you back on the show. I want to end with a quote of yours that I love. Treason is when your country's at war and you want the other side to win. That's exactly the way the left looks at it. David, thank you for being here, and we would love to have you back.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be back in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.